Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping straight into the numbers behind Greene County's initial 2026 budget requests.
Yep, we're going to try and pull out the key financial insights from those summary notes.
Exactly. We're setting aside the political back and forth.
Sure.
This is purely about the professional financial analysis presented in the documents.
It's really important for you, the listener, to remember what these initial requests are. It's all part of a legally required, transparent process.
Right. They have to release them.
They do. But this is the starting line. Maybe think of it like a departmental wish list. It's not the final budget. So imbalances at this stage, totally expected.
Our goal here is to really pinpoint where the financial pressures are showing up early.
And the key metric, the number we really need to watch throughout this, is the change in cash position.
Explain that a bit.
Simple, really. If that projected number is negative for a fund, it means the requests add up to more than the projected income for that year.
So they'd have to dip into savings, into their existing cash balance, just to fund everything requested.
Precisely. That negative change in cash is like the flashing warning light. And when we start digging into specific funds, we definitely see some of those lights flashing, especially around long-term sustainability.
Okay, let's do that then. Let's unpack some of these specific funds. Which ones look okay, and which ones seem to be under structural stress already?
Well, let's kick off with the assessment fund. This one raises a bit of an early flag about sustainability.
How so?
The initial request plans on using over $500,000, about $550,000 of money carried over from the previous year.
Okay, using prior year balance. That happens.
It does, but here's the kicker. Even after they account for estimated vacancy savings, money they think they'll save because positions might sit empty for a bit.
Right, the usual budget padding for vacancies.
Exactly. Even with that factored in, they're still projected to burn through almost $400,000 of existing cash.
And the concern there is what that cash is being used for, isn't it? If it's just covering regular ongoing operating costs.
That's the worry. It suggests the spending level itself might be too high for the revenue coming in, which isn't a sustainable path. It hints at a structural issue, not just a one-off expense.
Okay, so assessment fund, potential structural issue. How does that compare to, say, the E911 fund?
Now the E911 fund, according to the source documents, is in a much healthier spot. It has a strong cash balance to begin with.
And its spending request.
It is requesting a significant spend down, over $1.5 million. But here's the crucial difference. The documents show that more than that amount is tagged for one-time capital expenses.
So they're buying things like equipment or upgrades, not just paying salaries or utilities out of savings.
Exactly. Using reserves for specific non-recurring purchases is very different from using them to cover a gap in day-to-day operational funding. That's generally seen as sound fiscal management.
That distinction is key. Savings for projects versus savings just to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
Are there other funds spending down reserves for specific purposes like that?
Yes, a couple stand out. The 31st Judicial Circuit Surcharge Fund. That money's earmarked for CART facility improvements. The request project spending basically all of its built-up balance, but it's for those planned facility upgrades.
Makes sense. Plan spend down for a defined goal.
Right. And similarly, the federal stimulus fund, the ARPA money we've talked about before, that's expected to be fully spent down too.
Because those projects have a hard deadline, end of 2026, right?
Correct. So again, a planned depletion of funds for specific, time-bound projects, not a structural operating deficit.
Okay. And there's one more major reduction mentioned, this one in the bond fund. Looks like healthy debt management.
Absolutely. That's a big number. A planned reduction of $21.6 million in the bond fund balances. But the sources are clear. It's tied to three very specific financially sound actions. Paying off the Neighborhood Improvement District bond, that's one. Using the last bits of money from the Series 2022A bond to finish construction projects, that's two. And just making general scheduled bond payments, that's three.
So, retiring debt, finishing capital projects, that's what bond funds are for. Seems perfectly normal.
Exactly. It's a planned structural reduction related to managing debt and capital investments.
Okay, so that covers some of the more specialized funds. But the real heart of the county's finances, the central hub, is the general revenue fund, isn't it?
It absolutely is. That's the main operating account. And critically, it often has to cover shortfalls in other county funds. It's the backstop.
And the documents point to one fund in particular that seems to lean heavily on general revenue.
They do. The Law Enforcement Sales Tax Fund, or LES Fund. The analysis shows it regularly relies on transfers from general revenue.
And how does that look in this initial 2026 request?
It looks substantial. The LEST fund is asking for a transfer of roughly $6 million from general revenue, just
Yeah.
to cover its own cash needs based on its requests.
$6 million. How does that compare to prior years?
Well, that's the really striking part. That $6 million request is about $4.6 million more than the transfer that was budgeted for LEST in 2025.
Wow. Okay. A $4.6 million increase in the subsidy needed from the general taxpayers just for that one fund. That's a huge jump. What's driving that? The sources must break it down.
They do. The analysis points to basically four main drivers for that $4.6 million increase.
All right, let's tick through them. What's the first one?
First, it's partly a strategic choice about cash levels. In the 2025 budget, they plan to reduce the LEST cash balance by about $630,000. For 2026, the request aims to keep the cash level flat.
So just deciding not to spend down cash automatically requires $630,000 more in funding compared to the previous plan. Okay, driver number 2.
Second, projected revenue is down. Net sales tax revenues specifically for the LEST fund are expected to decline by about $883,000 compared to the 2025 budget.
Less money coming in naturally means you need more from somewhere else, like general revenue. Makes sense. What's third?
Third is capital spending, specifically vehicles. The request includes almost $1 million more for vehicles in 2026 compared to what was budgeted in 2025. It's up from about $816,000 budgeted in 25.
Okay, nearly $1 million jump in vehicle requests alone. And the fourth driver, you mentioned personnel earlier.
Yes, the fourth driver is the increase in the Sheriff's Office requests, specifically within the LES fund. Net of those estimated vacancy savings we talked about, the increase is almost $1.72 million.
Okay, $1.7 million more for the Sheriff's Office within LEST. Where's that money going? Is it new hires,
Yeah.
raises, operation?
It's a mix. The documents show about $997,000, almost $1 million, is for changes related to existing positions, could be raises, reclassifications, benefits. About $289,000 is for operations, another $62,000 or so for capital, and the rest covers, the normal step pay increases employees get mid-year.
Got it. So a big chunk for existing personnel costs plus operations and capital. Okay, so we've established this significant pull on general revenue from the LES fund. Let's pivot now to general revenue itself. What about the spending increases requested by departments funded directly by general revenue? That must be where the other big pressures are.
Oh, absolutely. When you look inside the General Revenue Fund requests, you see some really large volume increases compared to the 2025 budget.
In which department leads the pack there?
It's the Sheriff's Office again, but this time for its General Revenue funded operations. Their requested increase is the single highest, over $7.5 million more than the 2025 budget.
$7.5 million. That's enormous. What's driving that increase? Is it the same mix as in LES?
It's actually even more focused. What's really striking is that over $7.4 million of that $7.5 million increase is tagged as personnel related.
Wow, almost entirely people costs.
Mhm.
Can you break that down further? New positions versus raises.
Yes. According to the analysis, almost $863,000 is specifically requested for new positions. But the lion's share, almost $4.2 million, is allocated for pay raises or other adjustments for existing positions.
$4.2 million just in raises and adjustments for current staff in that one department's GR budget. That's significant. What about non-personnel costs?
Relatively minor in comparison, the request shows operational costs increased by only about $111,000. So the $7.5 million surge is fundamentally driven by personnel expenses.
Okay, Sheriff's Office is number 1. Which department request shows the next largest increase in general revenue?
That would be the Commission Office. Their net increase comes in around $705,000.
Net increase, does that mean there were cuts elsewhere in their budget?
Exactly. It's a bit counterintuitive. The documents note some large reductions within the Commission's overall request, like they cut $1.45 million for a planned animal shelter project that's not moving forward in 26, and over $580,000 less requested for special construction projects compared to 25.
So they cut over $2 million in specific projects, but their overall request still went up by $700,000. Where did the increase come from then?
It points to a huge increase within one specific area under the Commission, the Information Systems Department.
IT. That often means big-ticket items.
It does here. IS requested over $325,000 for new positions, another $654,000 for operational needs, think software, licenses, support, and a big jump in capital requests, almost $700,000 more than 2025, likely for hardware upgrades, servers, things like that.
So a major investment push in county technology infrastructure drove the commission office increase despite other cuts. Okay, who's next on the list of significant GR increases?
The county clerk's office, their request is up by about $684,000.
And the driver there, elections.
Primarily, yes. The analysis highlights almost $559,000 of that increase is directly related to the higher costs associated with running elections in a general election year, even though it's not a presidential one. Elections are just inherently expensive.
Right, cyclical costs. What else in the clerk's request?
There's also about $64,200 requested for voter registration operations.
Okay, and let's cover one more major one, the prosecuting attorney's office.
Their request shows an increase of about $640,000 over the 2025 budget.
How does that break down? Personnel again?
It is, but there's a nuance. When
Yeah.
you factor in vacancy savings from the prior year, nearly $500,000, the net increase is closer to $140,000.
Okay, so vacancy savings makes a big difference there. What are the components of that 140K net increase?
The analysis shows over $83,000 is requested for position increases or adjustments, and the remaining $64,000 is for operational increases, including costs related to the Family Justice Center.
All right, so we've got a budget request landscape dominated by really significant personnel cost increases, especially in law enforcement,
Yeah.
plus some major IT investments and election cycle costs. Now, the billion-dollar question, or maybe the $39 million question, can the county actually afford this request from a cash flow perspective?
That's exactly where the professional analysis has to go next. It's not just about the total requested versus total revenue for the year. It's about when the money comes in versus when it needs to go out. Cash flow timing.
And that's often where budgets hit the wall, isn't it? The timing mismatches.
Precisely. Based on historical patterns detailed in the source documents, the county's cash flow gets really tight at certain points in the year. The analysis projects the peak timing deficit will hit in November 2026.
Peak timing deficit. What does that mean in plain numbers?
It means that in that single month, November 2026, the county is projected to pay out or transfer out approximately $38.8 million more than it takes in or transfers in.
Whoa, nearly $39 million short in 1 month. How is that even possible? Why such a huge gap?
It's structural, baked into how county finances often work. Think about it. The county pays its bills, payroll, vendors regularly, but some of its biggest income sources lag. State and federal reimbursements, for example. The county often spends the money first, then waits, sometimes months, to get reimbursed. And the biggest one, sales tax. It's the county's top revenue source, but there's roughly a 3-month lag between when people pay the tax at the store and when the county actually receives the cash.
3 months lag. Okay.
In fact, the analysis notes that more than 20% of all general revenue isn't actually received until after the calendar year ends, even though it was technically earned in that year.
So you need a big cushion, a big reserve balance, just to handle those normal timing differences month to month.
You absolutely do, just to bridge those gaps. Now, connect that to this budget request. If this requested budget were fully enacted, the projection shows it would reduce the county's overall cash balance by over $13.5 million by the end of 2026.
$13.5 million reduction in cash reserves over the year. How does that compare to recent history?
It's significantly higher. For context, the actual cash reduction in 2024 was around $7.6 million, and that was considered a year with relatively aggressive spending down of reserves. The planned reduction in the current 2025 budget is about $4.8 million, so $13.5 million is a much bigger dip into savings.
Okay, so this brings us to the crunch point, the conclusion about affordability.
Right. We have to look at the starting point. The analysis calculates the county's usable cash balance at the end of 2024, which forms the basis for 2025 and influences 2026. After removing restricted reserves and accounting for the change budgeted in 2025, that usable starting figure is estimated at about $35.2, maybe $35.3 million.
$35 million in usable cash reserves. But wait, you just said the projected peak cash need in November 2026, just to cover timing, is almost $39 million.
And that's the fundamental problem laid bare by the numbers. The available $35 million isn't enough to cover that projected $39 million peak operational cash requirement.
Let alone any other unexpected needs.
Exactly. And remember that $6 million LEST transfer request. That adds another layer. The timing difference within LEAS itself creates an additional peak need of about $8.5 million that general revenue cash also implicitly needs to be able to cover.
So the math just doesn't work. The $35 million in reserves can't cover a $39 million peak operational need, plus potentially backstop an $8.5 million need in LES.
Correct. The professional, unemotional financial conclusion from the analysis is unavoidable. The TURCMA simply cannot fund all aspects of this initial requested budget. Doing so would deplete cash reserves below the level needed to manage those predictable structural timing differences. It's financially unsustainable as presented.
So the $13.5 million projected reduction is too steep. It would leave the county without enough operating cash.
It would leave far too little buffer, which means the next step falls to the county budget department. They have to take these requests and build a recommended budget that is sustainable, that does balance within realistic cash flow constraints.
What's their process for doing that? What are the concrete steps they need to take now, according to the analysis?
The documents outline basically a 4-step action plan for the budget department to get from this request summary to a balanced recommendation.
Okay, step 1.
First, they need to formally incorporate those estimated position vacancy savings, we mentioned them earlier. Just for general revenue, that's projected to potentially save around $2.3 million right off the bat.
Okay, build in the vacancy savings. Step 2.
Second, they need to really dig into those large timing difference projections for 2026. They'll compare the projections against the actual detailed cash flow activity from 2024 to refine the estimates and make sure they're as accurate as possible.
Ground truth, the timing projections with real data.
Got it.
Third step, revenue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Third, they need to revisit and likely update the 2025 revenue projections. Remember, when these initial requests were put together, they probably only had about 6 months of actual 2025 revenue data. As more data comes in through the rest of this year, they can get a clearer picture of what 2025 will actually look like.
Which directly impacts the starting point for 2026.
Precisely. And that leads to the fourth step, scrutinizing the projections for the ending 2025 fund balances. The analysis calls this one of the most critical elements. A healthier than expected ending balance in 2025 gives them more flexibility, more breathing room heading into 2026.
So, incorporate vacancy, refine timing projections, update revenue forecasts, and finalize the 2025 ending balance estimate. That's the technical path forward.
That's the plan. And the goal, mandated by statute, is for the budget department to present a recommended budget by November 15th of this year, 2025, that is sustainable.
And importantly, one that ideally leaves some excess cash available, right?
Yeah.
So the county commission can then make the final policy decisions about which requested items get funded above the baseline.
Exactly. The aim is to present a balanced budget framework, plus options for the commission to prioritize based on available resources above that baseline.
Okay, so if you had to boil this whole initial analysis down for the listener, what are the 2 absolute must-know data points or takeaways?
For me, number 1 is the sheer scale of the personnel-driven increases requested in general revenue, particularly that $7.5 million request from the sheriff's office, with $7.4 million of it being personnel costs. That's the biggest single engine driving the increased spending request.
Okay, the personnel cost surge. And number 2.
Number 2 is the structural cash flow problem. That projected $38.8 million peak timing deficit in November compared against the roughly $35 million in available starting reserves. That mismatch demonstrates, purely from a financial mechanics perspective, why the initial requested budget as a whole is not feasible without significant adjustments.
It really sets up the tough choices ahead. Which leads us to the final thought.
Right. Since we know the budget must be reduced by millions, likely more than just those vacancy savings can cover, the unavoidable question facing the county commission during their review is this. What specific programs, services, or line items, beyond just not filling empty positions, will ultimately need to be cut, deferred, or adjusted to bridge that projected $13.5 million year-end gap and ensure there's enough cash left in the bank to operate smoothly day to day?
That's the multi-million-dollar question they'll have to answer in the coming months. It highlights the difference between a request and a fiscally responsible approved budget.
Indeed. Prioritization becomes paramount.
A complex financial picture, and the process is just beginning. Thanks for walking us through that detailed analysis.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Greene County's initial 2026 budget requests.